You're a disgrace, not welcome. Here you're no longer part of this family." Those words hit me like a freight train as I stood in the middle of my childhood dining room 4 months pregnant, clutching my Columbia Law School diploma in one hand and my suitcase in the other. My mother, Margaret, stepped forward, her face cold as stone. "You chose failure, so sleep on the streets." I looked around the table at my brother Daniel, who stared at his plate, and my sister Sarah, who actually turned her face away from me. My father, Richard, stood with his arms crossed, waiting for me to leave. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. But I held my head high. They didn't know one thing. 1 week from now, they would find out who the father of my baby was, and they would be on their knees, begging me to forgive them. The silence in that dining room was deafening. I tried to speak to explain that I had just graduated at the top of my class summa cum laude, that I had a future, that this baby was not a mistake. But my father raised his hand to cut me off before I could even form the words. "You ruined everything," he said, his voice low and dangerous. He wouldn't even look at my face. His eyes were fixed on my barely visible baby bump like it was some kind of disease. "I've built a reputation in this community for 30 years, and you walk in here like this?" "Mom," I started turning to my mother, but she shook her head. "We're respected in this community," Margaret said, her voice trembling with anger, or maybe shame, I couldn't tell which. "And you brought shame. What will people think when they see you, unmarried, pregnant, throwing away your education?" "I'm not throwing it away," I protested. "I just graduated. I have my degree. I have opportunities." My brother Daniel shifted in his seat. "Maybe we should listen to what she has to say," he offered weakly, but my father's head snapped toward him so fast I thought his neck might break. "Stay out of this," Richard barked. Sarah, my younger sister, 24 years old, and always competing with me, finally spoke up. "I told you she'd ruin everything. She's always been selfish, thinking only about herself. Now look what she's done." I wanted to scream at her that she had no idea what she was talking about, that I had spent 3 years working myself to exhaustion studying until 3 in the morning, surviving on coffee and determination. I wanted to tell them about the father, about how he was someone they would respect, someone they would be proud to know, but they wouldn't let me speak. My father stood up from his chair, the legs scraping against the hardwood floor. "Get out," he said, pointing toward the front door. "Now." I felt tears burning behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall, not in front of them, not when they were treating me like I was nothing. I turned and walked toward the stairs to get the rest of my things from my old room. The house looked exactly as it had when I left for law school 3 years ago. The walls were still painted that soft cream color my mother loved. Family photos lined the hallway, pictures of Daniel's college graduation, Sarah's engagement party, last year my high school valedictorian speech. I wondered how long it would take for them to take down any pictures that included me. I pushed open the door to my childhood bedroom. The bed was made with the same floral comforter I'd had since I was 16. My old debate team trophies sat on the shelf above my desk. I grabbed a duffel bag from the closet and started shoving clothes into it. Jeans, sweaters, a few professional outfits I'd need for job interviews. The door opened behind me. I turned, hoping maybe it was Daniel coming to apologize, to tell me he'd stand by me. But it was my mother. "Don't come back until you fix this mess," she said, her arms wrapped around herself like she was cold. "Fix this," I repeated, my hand instinctively moving to my stomach. "You mean my baby?" She didn't answer. She just turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing down the hallway. Before I could zip up my bag, Sarah burst into the room. She walked straight to my bookshelf and grabbed the crystal award I'd received last year engraved with Best Daughter. She held it up in front of my face. "You don't deserve this anymore," she said, and walked out with it. I finished packing in silence. When I came back downstairs, my father was sitting in his leather armchair in the living room reading the Boston Globe like nothing had happened. He didn't look up as I walked past. He didn't say goodbye. I opened the front door and stepped out into the November rain. Boston in late autumn was brutal, cold, and wet and miserable. I didn't have an umbrella. I didn't have a car here. I'd taken the train from New York, expecting to stay the weekend, expecting my family to be happy, for me to celebrate my graduation, even if they were surprised about the baby. I stood on the porch for a moment, getting soaked, looking back at the house where I'd grown up. The lights were warm inside. Through the window, I could see my family sitting back down at the dinner table, continuing their meal like I had never been there at all. I pulled out my phone and tried to call my best friend, Amanda. The call went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. My hands were shaking from cold and shock and the crushing weight of being completely alone. I walked 3 blocks in the rain before I found a small hotel, the kind with a flickering neon sign and a lobby that smelled like cigarette smoke and cleaning solution. The clerk barely looked at me as I paid for a room with my credit card, $120 a night. I had maybe $12,000 in my savings account. That would last me 4 months if I was careful, less if I wasn't. The room was tiny and depressing. A double bed with a thin comforter, a TV that only got basic cable, a bathroom with a dripping faucet. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at my law degree still in its leather folder. Columbia Law School. 3 years of the hardest work of my life. And for what? To be homeless, at 28 years old, pregnant and alone. I put my hand on my stomach, 4 months along. The baby was the size of an avocado, according to the pregnancy app on my phone. I'd been so excited this morning, thinking I'd get to share this news with my family, let them feel happy about becoming grandparents, get my mother's advice about doctors and nurseries. Instead, I was sitting in a hotel room that probably had bedbugs, wondering how I was going to survive. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I heard what happened. They don't know who I am yet, but they will. Meet me tomorrow at the firm. A. My breath caught. A. Alexander, the father. How did he already know I hadn't even had time to call him? I'd been planning to tell him in person tomorrow, but now he was texting me like he'd been there, like he'd witnessed the whole nightmare. I tried calling the number. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. Something felt wrong. How did he know I looked out the window of my hotel room? Across the street, under a broken streetlight, a black sedan was parked. I couldn't see if anyone was inside, but I had the distinct feeling I was being watched. I closed the curtain and sat back down on the bed. Tomorrow I'd go to the firm and get answers. Tonight, I just needed to survive. I didn't sleep well. The bed was uncomfortable, and every time a car drove past outside, I startled awake thinking about that black sedan. By 6 in the morning, I gave up trying to sleep and took a shower in the tiny bathroom. The water pressure was weak, and the temperature fluctuated between scalding and freezing, but at least it washed away the feeling of last night. I got dressed in one of my interview suits, a navy blazer and pencil skirt that I'd bought for law school career fairs. It still fit barely, though I had to leave the top button of the skirt undone. I put on minimal makeup, trying to hide the dark circles under my eyes and the puffiness from crying. The address Alexander had texted me led to a building in downtown Boston, all glass and steel and money. The directory in the lobby listed Hayes and Associates on the 14th floor. I'd known Alexander was successful, but seeing his name on the building in elegant bronze letters made it real in a way it hadn't been before. The elevator opened into a reception area that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Cream leather furniture, abstract art on the walls, a receptionist who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion shoot. She smiled at me with perfect white teeth. "You must be Ursula," she said. "Mr. Hayes is expecting you. Conference room 2, down the hall on your right." I followed her directions, my heels clicking on the marble floor. The conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The table could easily seat 20 people. And sitting at the head of it, looking at his laptop, was Alexander. He stood when I walked in. Alexander Hayes was 35 tall and fit with dark hair starting to gray at the temples and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. He was wearing a suit that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe, and he looked every inch the successful attorney he was. "Ursula," he said, and his voice was warm, concerned. He crossed the room and pulled me into a hug. I let myself lean into him for just a moment before pulling back. "How did you know?" I asked. "About last night. I didn't call you." He looked uncomfortable. "Let's sit down." We sat across from each other at the massive table. He folded his hands in front of him, a gesture I recognized from watching him prepare for court arguments. "Your father called my office yesterday afternoon," he said. I felt like I'd been punched. What? He'd somehow found out about us. I don't know how. He called and asked to speak to me about his daughter who was involved with one of the partners. I denied it at first, but he was persistent. He said he knew it was me. "And you told him?" "No," Alexander said firmly. "I didn't confirm anything. But he seemed convinced. He said he wanted me to stay away from you, that it would be better for everyone if we ended things quietly." I felt sick. So he knew. He knew before I even got there. That's why he was so ready to throw me out. Alexander nodded. "I think he was trying to teach you a lesson. Punish you for being with me. He made some threats about my reputation about going to the state bar, claiming our relationship was inappropriate because we met at a professional conference." "That's ridiculous," I said. "I wasn't your student or your employee. There's nothing inappropriate about it." "I know, but your father doesn't care about facts. He cares about control." I thought about growing up in that house. The way my father always had to have the final word on everything. What I studied, where I went to college, who I dated. I'd thought that moving to New York for law school would give me freedom. But even from 200 miles away, he'd managed to reach into my life and rip it apart. "There's something else," Alexander said. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder. "I did some checking this morning, called a few contacts. Your father has been making calls, Ursula. A lot of calls." "What kind of calls?" "He's been contacting law firms all over Boston, telling them not to hire you." My hands clenched into fists on the table. "What?" "He's claiming you're unstable, that you have personal issues that make you unsuitable for professional work. He's using his connections. He's a senior partner at Bridgewater Financial, and he knows people. A lot of people." "That's defamation," I said, my legal training kicking in. "He can't do that." "He can if no one's willing to testify against him. And no one will, because he's Richard Thompson, and he has power in this city." I felt tears starting to form, but I blinked them back. So what am I supposed to do? I can't get a job. I can't go home. I'm pregnant, and I have nowhere to live. Alexander reached across the table and took my hand. "You can stay with me. I have an apartment in Cambridge. 2 bedrooms, plenty of space. You and the baby will be safe there." I pulled my hand back. And what I just hide, let my father win. It's not hiding, it's being strategic. Look, Ursula, there's something I haven't told you. My custody case with Helen is still ongoing. We're in mediation trying to work out the details about the kids. If she finds out about us, about the baby, she'll use it against me. She'll claim I'm unfit, that I was having an affair before the divorce was final. Were you? I asked, though I already knew the answer. No, we separated 18 months ago. The divorce was final last spring, but the custody battle started afterward, and it's been brutal. Helen wants full custody, and she's fighting dirty. So you want me to hide so your ex-wife doesn't find out about me? He sighed. I'm asking you to be patient. Give me 3 months. The custody hearing is in December. Once that's settled, I can go public about us. We can get married if you want. I'll support you and the baby openly. But right now, if this comes out, I could lose my kids. I stood up and walked to the window. Below, people were walking to work, carrying coffee cups, talking on their phones, living normal lives. What was my normal now? I need to think about it, I said. Of course. Take your time. But Ursula, please know that I'm here for you, whatever you decide. I left the office and called Amanda again. This time she answered. Oh my God, Ursula, I'm so sorry, she said immediately. My phone died yesterday and I forgot my charger at the office. I just got your voicemail. What happened? I told her everything. The dinner, my father's threats, Alexander's revelations. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Your dad is insane, she finally said. And Alexander, I don't know, it sounds complicated. That's what I thought. Come stay with me, she offered. My apartment is small, but we'll make it work. Amanda lived in a studio in Somerville. There was barely room for her, let alone me and all my stuff, but I appreciated the offer. Let me figure some things out first, I said. I'm going to apply to some jobs, see what happens. Over the next 2 days, I sent out my resume to every law firm I could find. Sullivan and Cromwell Ropes and Gray Goodwin Proctor. I'd interviewed with some of them during my 3rd year and gotten positive responses. Ropes and Gray had practically offered me a position pending bar results. On the 3rd day, I got an email from Ropes and Gray. We regret to inform you that we cannot proceed with your application at this time. My stomach dropped. I called the recruiter. I'd been working with a woman named Patricia who'd been enthusiastic about my prospects. Patricia, it's Ursula Thompson. I just got your email, and I'm confused. I thought we were moving forward. There was an uncomfortable pause. I'm sorry, Ursula. There were some concerns raised about your background. What concerns? I have a clean record, excellent grades, strong recommendations. I can't discuss the specifics. I'm sorry. It's just not going to work out. She hung up before I could ask anything else. I called Sullivan and Cromwell. Your application has been withdrawn. I called Goodwin. We've decided to go with another candidate. All 3 firms. In the same day. I sat in my hotel room staring at my phone, feeling the walls closing in. My father had done this. He'd reached out to every firm I'd applied to and poisoned the well. He was systematically destroying my career before it even started. And the worst part was I couldn't prove it. I couldn't sit in that hotel room anymore. The walls felt like they were closing in, and I needed air, needed to do something, anything. I called Jessica Chen, but then I remembered the name restrictions. I needed to call someone else. I scrolled through my contacts and found Jessica Martinez, a friend from law school, who'd decided to become a private investigator instead of practicing law. She'd always said the real interesting work happened outside the courtroom. Jessica, I need your help, I said when she answered. 2 days later, we met at a coffee shop in Cambridge. She slid a folder across the table to me. Your father's been busy, she said. I made some calls, talked to some people. He contacted at least 7 major firms in Boston. Told them you were emotionally unstable, involved in inappropriate relationships, not suitable for professional work. Can I sue him for this? You could try, but you'd need someone at those firms willing to testify, and no one will. They're all worried about their own reputations, their own business relationships with him. Your father is connected, Ursula. He sits on boards, he knows judges, he golfs with senior partners. No one wants to cross him. I felt defeated. So he just gets to ruin my life, and there's nothing I can do about it. I didn't say that. Jessica leaned forward. There are other options. Smaller firms, nonprofits, corporate legal departments. But you need to move fast, and you need money. Money. That was becoming the biggest problem. I'd been in the hotel for 5 days now. $600 gone. I had appointments for prenatal care that my student insurance wouldn't cover anymore because I'd graduated. I needed at least $15,000 just to cover medical bills for the delivery, and that was assuming everything went smoothly. Alexander had offered to pay for everything, but accepting his money felt like giving up my independence, like admitting I couldn't do this alone. I spent the next week applying to smaller firms, places my father might not have thought to contact, immigration law offices, family law practices, criminal defense attorneys who operated out of small offices above pizza shops. None of them were hiring. Meanwhile, my money was draining away. Hotel food transportation, doctor visits. I'd started buying cheap sandwiches from convenience stores and eating them in my room to save money. I wore the same 3 outfits on rotation. I stopped buying coffee. And then Sarah posted on Facebook. It was a photo of our family at Daniel's house, all smiles. Mom, Dad, Daniel, and his wife Sarah and her fiancé. The caption read, "Family is everything. Loyalty matters." I wasn't tagged. I wasn't in the photo. But the message was clear. The comments started rolling in. Friends from high school relatives, family friends. "Beautiful family," one person wrote. "You're so blessed," wrote another. And then someone asked, "Where's Ursula?" Sarah's response appeared within minutes. Some people choose to walk away from family values. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. Instead, I blocked Sarah. Then I blocked my parents. Then I turned off my phone completely and stared at the ceiling of my hotel room, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. The next morning, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Ursula. It was my mother's voice. "How did you get this number?" "That doesn't matter. I'm calling because I want to help you." "Help me. You threw me out." There was a pause. "If you give up the baby for adoption, you can come home." I sat up so fast I got dizzy. "What did you just say?" "You're not ready to be a mother. You have no job, no home. We can help you find a good family, people who can provide everything a child needs, and then you can come back, restart your career, put this behind you." "My baby is not a mistake to be erased," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "We're trying to help you, Ursula. You're throwing your life away for a man who won't even claim you publicly. Don't you see how this looks?" I hung up. My hands were trembling. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. Instead, I called Alexander. "They want me to give up the baby," I told him. "My own mother just asked me to give up my baby so I can come home and pretend none of this happened." "That's not going to happen," Alexander said firmly. "You're keeping this baby, and I'm going to help you. Move in with me, Ursula, please. You need stability, and I can provide that. I agreed. Not because I wanted to, but because I was out of options. I moved into Alexander's apartment the next day. It was beautiful, modern, with huge windows and expensive furniture. He gave me the spare bedroom and told me to make myself at home. But I felt like a guest, like I was imposing, like at any moment he might change his mind and ask me to leave too. 2 weeks later, a process server found me at Alexander's apartment. "Ursula Thompson?" he asked. "Yes." He handed me a thick envelope. "You've been served." Inside was a legal petition. Richard and Margaret Thompson were petitioning the court for grandparents' rights. They claimed I was an unfit mother, unable to provide stable housing or financial support, suffering from emotional instability. They were asking the court to grant them custody of my baby when he or she was born. I called Christopher Walsh, the attorney from Legal Aid that Jessica had recommended. He came to meet me that afternoon. "This is serious," he said after reviewing the documents. In Massachusetts, grandparents can petition for rights if they can prove it's in the best interest of the child. And unfortunately, they have a case. You're unemployed, you don't have permanent housing, and they'll argue that you've been unstable since your pregnancy. But I have a law degree from Columbia, which means nothing if you can't get a job. Look, Ursula, I'll help you fight this, but you need to understand what we're up against. Your parents have resources, they have stability, and they have a lawyer who's going to make you look as bad as possible." I felt sick. Can they actually win? It's possible. We need to build your case. Show that you're capable, that you have support, that you're thinking clearly about the future. I looked at Alexander, who'd been sitting quietly during this whole conversation. "If we go public about you being the father, would that help?" Alexander hesitated. "It would help your case," he admitted. "But my custody hearing with Helen is in 2 weeks. If this comes out now, I'll lose my kids. So I have to choose between protecting myself and protecting you." No one said anything. I made my decision. I can't let you lose your children because of me. We'll fight this without mentioning you. Christopher looked skeptical but nodded. Then we need to move fast. The hearing is in 3 weeks. The next 3 weeks were the hardest of my life. Christopher helped me build a case, but everything felt like we were fighting uphill. My parents had hired an expensive attorney who filed motion after motion, each one painting me as more unstable, more unfit, more irresponsible. I started working with Grace Sullivan's organization, Second Chances Legal Fund. Grace had reached out after seeing some mentions of my case online. She offered me a position as a junior attorney helping women in custody battles. It didn't pay much, but it was something. It proved I could work, that I was thinking about my future. But the stress was killing me. At my 20-week prenatal appointment, the doctor took my blood pressure and frowned. "It's elevated," she said. "Have you been under stress?" I almost laughed. "Yes. You need to reduce your stress levels. This isn't good for the baby or for you. I'm going to recommend modified bed rest. Nothing strenuous, plenty of sleep, calm environment." I don't have a calm environment, I wanted to say. Instead, I nodded and promised to take it easy. But how could I take it easy when my parents were trying to take my baby? When I had a court date looming? When every day felt like another battle I was losing? Amanda came to visit one evening. She took one look at me and her face fell. "Ursula, you look terrible." "Thanks," I said weakly. "I'm serious. You've lost weight. You have circles under your eyes. This isn't healthy." "I know. But what am I supposed to do? Just give up?" No, but you need to let people help you. Let Alexander help. Let me help. You can't do this alone. I'm not alone, I protested. But even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. I felt completely isolated. Alexander was supportive, but he had his own life, his own problems. Amanda visited when she could, but she had a demanding job. Christopher was professional and capable, but he was my lawyer, not my friend. That night around 11, I felt something wet and warm. I went to the bathroom and saw blood. Not a lot, but enough to make me panic. I called Alexander, but his phone went to voicemail. He was in court. I remembered some big case that had him working late. I called Amanda, no answer. I called Christopher's office, closed. I called 911. The paramedics arrived within 10 minutes. They were calm and professional, asking me questions, checking my vitals, helping me into the ambulance. At the hospital, a doctor examined me and did an ultrasound. The baby's heartbeat is strong, she said, but you're showing signs of stress-related complications. We need to keep you here for observation, at least for tonight. I spent 3 days in the hospital. The bleeding stopped, and the doctors said the baby was fine, but they were worried about me. My blood pressure was still high. I wasn't eating enough. I was, in the words of one doctor, running myself into the ground. Alexander finally showed up on the second day with flowers and apologies. I'm so sorry, he said. The custody hearing was yesterday. I couldn't leave. And how did it go? I asked. Not sure I wanted to know. I won. Joint custody 50-50 split. It's what I wanted. I should have been happy for him. Instead, I felt resentful. He'd won his battle while I was lying in a hospital bed fighting mine alone. Ursula, he said, sitting down beside the bed. Let me tell you something. Helen is Judge Martin Peterson's daughter. I stared at him. The judge who's handling my case? Yes. That's a conflict of interest. He can't oversee my case if he has a connection to you through his daughter. I filed a motion for recusal immediately. 2 days later, the response came back. Motion denied. Judge Peterson claimed there was no conflict because he didn't have a direct relationship with my parents. Technically, he was right. But everyone knew what was really happening. Helen hated Alexander. Helen hated me. And her father was going to use his position to make sure I lost. Christopher tried to appeal, but there wasn't time. The hearing was in 1 week. And then things got worse. A blog post appeared online, written by someone anonymous. Columbia Law graduate gets pregnant. Abandoned by family, what did she do? The post was full of speculation and half-truths. It painted me as someone who must have done something terrible to deserve being kicked out. The comments were brutal. Some people defended me, but most were quick to judge. She probably cheated. What kind of daughter gets disowned? There has to be more to this story. I knew it was Sarah. It had to be. She was always good with social media, always knew how to get attention. This was her way of controlling the narrative, of making sure people saw me the way our parents wanted them to see me. My mental health spiraled. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed at Alexander's apartment, staring at the ceiling, wondering how I'd ended up here. A year ago, I'd been at Columbia studying for finals, dreaming about my future as an attorney. Now I was unemployed, pregnant, fighting a custody battle against my own parents, and watching my life fall apart in real time. The doctor wanted to prescribe antidepressants, but I refused because of the pregnancy. Instead, she recommended therapy, meditation, anything to help me cope. But how do you meditate away the fact that your family wants to take your baby? How do you therapy your way out of systemic betrayal? I couldn't. So I just kept going day by day, because what else could I do? The email came on a Tuesday morning. I almost deleted it, thinking it was spam. The subject line read, "I can help." The sender was Grace Sullivan. I'd been working with her organization for a few weeks, but we hadn't spoken much beyond professional matters. I opened the email. "Ursula, I saw your story online. I know what you're going through because I lived it 20 years ago. I was pregnant, my family abandoned me, and they tried to take my baby. I fought them, and I won. Let me help you. Call me." I called immediately. Grace turned out to be in her late 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. We met at a coffee shop near her office, and she told me her story. She'd gotten pregnant at 25, and her wealthy parents had been horrified. They'd tried everything to make her give up the baby or let them raise it. She'd fought them in court and won. Her son was now 22, a college graduate, happy and healthy. "I started this organization because I never want another woman to feel as alone as I did," Grace said. "And Ursula, you're not alone. I'm going to help you." Grace did more than offer support. She hired an entire legal team to work on my case. They dug into my parents' background and found things that shocked me. My father had a record of workplace harassment from 15 years ago. He'd settled out of court, and it had been buried, but it was there. My mother had been hospitalized twice for depression, something she'd never told us kids about. "They're not perfect," Christopher said when he presented the findings, "and we can use that. They're trying to paint you as unstable, but they have their own history of mental health issues and questionable behavior." We interviewed people from my childhood, neighbors, teachers, friends' parents. Many of them remembered my parents as cold, demanding, and controlling. One of my high school teachers said she'd always worried about me, that I'd seemed under enormous pressure to be perfect. "Your Honor," Christopher said during a prep session, "my clients' parents have demonstrated a pattern of controlling behavior and emotional abuse. They have their own mental health challenges that they've never addressed. They're not suitable guardians for this child." The case was coming together, but I still felt like I was drowning. Every day was a fight to keep my head above water. And then, Alexander made a decision that changed everything. He called a press conference. "I'm here today to make a statement," he said, standing in front of a room full of reporters and cameras. "I am the father of Ursula Thompson's baby. I stand with her completely, and I want everyone to know that she is an intelligent, capable woman who will be an excellent mother. The treatment she's received from her family is unacceptable, and I'm proud to support her." The news exploded. Alexander Hayes, prominent attorney, publicly claims paternity of baby in custody battle. Helen was furious. She called him that night, screaming, threatening to reopen the custody case. But it was too late. Their agreement had been finalized. More importantly, Judge Peterson could no longer deny the conflict of interest. His daughter's ex-husband was the father of the baby in the case Peterson was overseeing. Within 48 hours, the case was transferred to Judge Maria Lopez, a woman with a reputation for fairness and no connection to any of us. My parents were panicking. I could see it in the emergency motions their lawyer filed, trying to argue that Alexander's involvement proved I was unstable, that I'd been having an affair with a married man. But Alexander had documentation proving that he and Helen had separated 18 months before we met, that the divorce had been finalized before our relationship became serious. The new hearing date was set for 2 weeks away. Christopher felt confident. "We have a good case," he said. "Judge Lopez is fair. She'll see through your parents' manipulation." But then my father made a critical mistake. Alexander received a phone call late one night. Richard didn't know Alexander was recording it. "You don't know what you're doing," Richard said, his voice thick with anger. I'll destroy you. I'll destroy both of you. I've been planning this for months since I found out about you two. You think you can just waltz in and take her side? I'll make sure she never sees that baby. I'll prove she's unfit if it's the last thing I do." Alexander stayed calm. "You're threatening me, Richard. I'm promising you. I have connections. I have power. You're going to regret this." After the call ended, Alexander immediately filed the recording with the court. It was legal in Massachusetts, a one-party consent state, and it was damning. Richard had confessed to deliberately sabotaging my career, to planning this custody battle for months, to making threats against both of us. Christopher was ecstatic. This changes everything. He's confessed to malicious interference, to conspiracy. This isn't about what's best for the child. This is about control and revenge. Around the same time, my brother Daniel finally reached out. He called me, his voice shaky. "Ursula, I'm so sorry. I should have stood up for you from the beginning. I was a coward." "What changed your mind?" I asked. "I couldn't take it anymore. Watching what Dad's doing, what Mom's going along with. It's wrong. I want to help you. I'll testify if you need me to." Daniel told me things I'd never known. Our father had controlled him his entire life, dictated his career, his marriage, everything. Daniel had wanted to be an artist, but our father had forced him into finance. He'd wanted to marry his college girlfriend, but our father had disapproved because she came from a working-class family. Daniel had spent his entire life trying to please someone who could never be pleased. I'll testify about the emotional abuse, about the control, about everything Daniel promised. You deserve to have your baby, Ursula, and I'm going to help make sure that happens. Even Margaret seemed to be wavering. She showed up at Alexander's apartment one afternoon alone, looking tired and older than I remembered. "Can we talk?" she asked. I let her in. She sat on the couch, her hands folded in her lap. "I think we've made a mistake," she said quietly. "Your father, he's been so angry and I got caught up in it. But seeing what's happening, seeing how far he's willing to go, I think maybe we were wrong." Maybe, I repeated. "Mom, you told me to sleep on the streets. You told me to give up my baby." "I know." She started crying. "I know, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. I don't know what I was thinking. Your father was so insistent, and I just went along with it, and now everything's falling apart." "Have you left him?" "We're separated. I moved in with your aunt for now. I don't know what's going to happen, but I couldn't stay there anymore." She looked at me with red, swollen eyes. "I don't expect you to forgive me. But please, Ursula, let me be part of my grandchild's life. When you're ready, I'll wait as long as you need." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to slam the door in her face. But another part, the part that remembered being a little girl and having my mother braid my hair, wanted to believe she meant it. "I need time," I finally said. "I can't just forget what you did." She nodded. "I understand. I'll wait." A week before the hearing, Richard sent a letter. It was handwritten, 2 pages long. His handwriting was shaky, not like his usual precise script. "Ursula, I'm sorry. I was wrong about everything. I let my pride and my need for control destroy our family. I hope one day you can forgive me. Your father." I didn't respond. The hearing was held on a cold morning in January. I was 6 months pregnant now, my belly round and impossible to hide. I wore a maternity dress in navy blue, professional, but comfortable. Christopher sat beside me at one table. Across the aisle, Richard and Margaret sat with their attorney, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit. Judge Maria Lopez entered, and we all stood. She was in her 50s, with short gray hair and sharp eyes. She sat down and reviewed the case file for a moment before looking up. "This is a petition for grandparents' rights," she said. "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson are seeking custody of a child who hasn't been born yet on the grounds that the mother is unfit. Let's hear arguments." Richard's attorney went first. He presented their case methodically. Ursula Thompson was unemployed for months after graduation. She had no stable housing. She was involved in a relationship with a recently divorced man. She showed signs of emotional instability. Christopher countered every point. Ursula Thompson has a law degree from Columbia, one of the best law schools in the country. She now works with Second Chances Legal Fund, helping women in crisis. She has stable housing with Alexander Hayes, her partner, who has publicly acknowledged paternity and committed to supporting both her and the child. As for emotional instability, she was under enormous stress from her parents' harassment and legal threats. Then came the testimonies. Daniel was first. He walked to the witness stand nervous but determined. He testified about our childhood, about our father's controlling nature, about the emotional abuse he'd witnessed and experienced. "My father would tell us we were never good enough," Daniel said. "Nothing we did was right. Ursula graduated top of her class, and instead of being proud, he focused on one mistake. When I told him I wanted to study art, he said I was being foolish and forced me into finance. We lived in fear of disappointing him." Richard's attorney tried to discredit him. "You're just bitter because your life didn't turn out the way you wanted." "No," Daniel said firmly. "I'm telling the truth because my sister deserves better than what we got." Grace Sullivan testified next, speaking about my work with her organization and my character. Amanda testified about our friendship and how responsible I'd always been. Alexander testified about our relationship, our plans for the future, his commitment to our family. Then came Margaret. Richard's attorney called her to the stand, expecting her to support their case. But Margaret looked at me as she was sworn in, and I saw something in her eyes. Regret. "Mrs. Thompson, do you believe your daughter is fit to be a mother?" the attorney asked. Margaret was quiet for a long moment. "I thought she had a good life with us. I thought we did everything right. But looking back, I realize we were too hard on her. We were too controlling. And when she needed us most, we abandoned her." The attorney looked stunned. "Mrs. Thompson, that's not what we discussed." "I know, but I can't lie anymore." She took a breath. "Ursula is strong, intelligent, and capable. She'll be a good mother, better than I was." Richard's attorney quickly dismissed her, clearly thrown off script. Finally, Richard took the stand. Christopher questioned him about the recorded phone call, about his attempts to sabotage my career, about his motivations for seeking custody. "You said you'd been planning this for months," Christopher pointed out. "You admitted to blacklisting your daughter from law firms across Boston. You made threats against both Ursula and Mr. Hayes. This isn't about the child's welfare, is it, Mr. Thompson?" Richard's face was red. "I was trying to protect my family's reputation. By destroying your daughter's life." She made her choice. She chose to get involved with an inappropriate man, to get pregnant out of wedlock, to embarrass us. Christopher paced in front of the witness stand. "Mr. Hayes was divorced when they met. There's nothing inappropriate about their relationship. The only inappropriate behavior here is yours. You used your influence to prevent your daughter from finding employment. You kicked her out of your home while she was pregnant. You filed a custody petition, not because you care about this child, but because you want to punish Ursula for defying you." "That's not true," Richard protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Christopher pulled out another document. "Your Honor, we have evidence that Mr. Thompson is facing financial difficulties. His firm is under investigation for fraud, and he may be terminated." We believe his real motivation for seeking custody is financial. Grandparents with custody can demand child support from biological parents. Mr. Hayes is a wealthy man. Mr. Thompson sees this child as a source of income. The courtroom went silent. Margaret turned to stare at Richard, her face pale. "Is this true?" she asked him. "Richard, were you using our grandchild for money?" Richard didn't answer. He just sat there, his face ashen. Judge Lopez held up her hand. "That's enough. This hearing is adjourned. I'll review the evidence and issue a ruling within the week." As we left the courtroom, Margaret caught up to me in the hallway. "I didn't know," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I swear to you, I didn't know he was planning to use the baby for money. I thought we were doing this because we cared." "Maybe you did care," I said. "But it doesn't change what you did." "I know," she wiped her eyes. "I'm filing for divorce. I can't be with someone who would do this." Sarah was standing nearby watching. She didn't say anything, but she didn't walk away either. Maybe she was finally starting to understand what our father really was. Judge Lopez's ruling came 6 days later. Christopher called me with the news before the official documents arrived. "You won," he said, completely. The written decision was thorough. Judge Lopez had seen through every one of my parents' arguments. She noted the evidence of emotional abuse, the financial motivations, the malicious interference in my career. She wrote that Richard and Margaret Thompson had demonstrated that their primary concern was control, not the welfare of the child. The petition for grandparents' rights was denied, with prejudice meaning they couldn't file again. Full parental rights remain with Ursula Thompson, the decision concluded. The court finds her to be a capable, intelligent woman with adequate support systems in place and genuine love for her unborn child. I cried when I read it. Not sad tears, but relief. Alexander held me while I sobbed into his shoulder, finally letting out months of fear and stress. "It's over," he kept saying. "You're safe. The baby's safe." The next few weeks were a blur of positive changes. I started working full-time at Second Chance's legal fund. Grace promoted me to a senior position, trusting me with more complex cases. The work was fulfilling in a way I'd never experienced before. I was helping women who'd been where I was fighting for their rights, their children, their futures. Alexander and I found a rhythm. His kids from his first marriage came to visit, and while it was awkward at first, they gradually warmed up to me. His daughter Emily, who was 12, even seemed excited about having a baby sibling. His son Thomas, who was 9, was less sure, but he came around when Alexander explained that more family meant more love, not less. Daniel visited often, sometimes bringing his wife. He'd started seeing a therapist to work through his own issues with our father. He told me he felt lighter, freer, like he'd been carrying a weight his whole life and had finally been allowed to put it down. Sarah remained distant. She didn't call, didn't text, didn't acknowledge what had happened, but she also stopped posting negative things about me online. Maybe that was the best I could hope for right now. One afternoon in February, the doorbell rang. I was 8 months pregnant, moving slowly, my back aching. I opened the door to find Margaret standing there, holding a small gift bag. "I know I don't have the right to be here," she said, "but I wanted to bring this. You don't have to let me in. I can just leave it and go." I looked at her. She'd aged in the past few months. Her hair had more gray, her face more lines. She looked smaller, somehow diminished. "Come in," I said. We sat in the living room. She handed me the gift bag. Inside was a small stuffed elephant, soft and blue. "I made this," she said. "I used to crochet when you kids were little. I thought maybe I could make something for the baby." "It's beautiful," I said, and I meant it. "Ursula, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I know what I did was unforgivable. But I want you to know that I'm seeing a therapist. I'm working on understanding why I let your father control me for so long, why I didn't stand up for you when I should have. I'm trying to be better. That's good, Mom. I hope it helps. She twisted her hands in her lap. Your father and I are divorced now. The proceedings were quick because I didn't fight for anything. I just wanted out. He's facing charges at his company. I don't know what's going to happen to him. How do you feel about that? Sad, angry, relieved. All of it. She looked at me. I wasted so many years with someone who didn't deserve my loyalty, and I almost lost my daughter because of it. You did lose me, I said quietly. At least for a while. I know, and if that's how it has to be, I'll accept it. But I hope someday you might let me back in, even just a little. I need time, I said. This has been the hardest year of my life, and a lot of that is because of choices you made. I can't just pretend it didn't happen. I understand. She stood to leave, then paused at the door. Whatever time you need, I'll wait. And Ursula, I'm proud of you. I should have said that a long time ago, but I'm saying it now. You're strong, you're successful, and you're going to be an amazing mother. After she left, I sat holding the little blue elephant, thinking about forgiveness and family and what it meant to move forward. A week later, a letter arrived from Richard. It was brief, handwritten, in shaky script that looked nothing like his usual precise penmanship. Ursula, I'm sorry. I was wrong about everything. I let my pride destroy our family. I hope one day you can forgive me, Dad. I didn't respond. Maybe someday I would, but not today. My daughter was born on March 15th, 3 weeks before my due date, but healthy and strong. We named her Sophia Grace after Grace Sullivan, who'd helped save us both. She was perfect with Alexander's blue eyes, and what the nurses said was my stubborn chin. Alexander was there for the birth, holding my hand crying when they placed Sophia on my chest for the first time. Amanda came to the hospital with flowers and balloons. Daniel brought his wife and a giant teddy bear. Grace stopped by with a basket full of baby essentials and a card that made me cry. Margaret asked if she could visit. I said yes, but only for a few minutes. She stood by the hospital bed, looking at Sophia with tears in her eyes, but she didn't ask to hold her. She just looked. She's beautiful, Margaret whispered. You did good, Ursula. Thank you. She left after 5 minutes, respecting the boundary I'd set. In the months that followed, life found a new normal. I went back to work part-time, bringing Sophia to the office when I needed to. Second Chance's legal fund had a nursery for exactly this reason. I took on cases, helped women fight for their rights, and found that my own experience made me better at my job. I understood what they were going through in a way no textbook could teach. Alexander and I got married in a small ceremony that summer, just family and close friends. Daniel was there. Amanda was my maid of honor. Grace gave a toast about second chances and new beginnings. Margaret came, but sat in the back, knowing her place. Richard did not attend. Looking back now, sitting in the nursery I decorated with so much hope, I could see the journey clearly. From that terrible dinner, where my father called me a disgrace, to this moment holding my sleeping daughter, I'd traveled through fire. I'd lost my family and found a new one. I'd been broken and rebuilt myself stronger. The people who stand by you in your darkest moments, those are your real family. Blood might make you related, but loyalty and love make you family. I learned that strength isn't about never being afraid. It's about continuing to fight even when you're terrified, even when everything seems impossible. I learned that sometimes you have to let go of toxic people even if they're family, to protect yourself and the people you love. And I learned that second chances aren't just for those who hurt you, they're for you too. A chance to start over, to build something better, to create the life you deserve. Sophia stirred in her crib, making little baby noises. I picked her up, held her close, breathed in that perfect baby smell. "We're going to be okay," I whispered to her. "We have everything we need." And we did. Love, support, strength, and each other. That was enough. That was everything. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and protecting yourself? Have you faced a situation where standing up for yourself meant losing people you loved? What would you have done in my position? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might help someone else who's going through something similar. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own relationships, or gave you strength to face your own battles, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories and know they're not alone. And if you want to hear more stories about resilience, about people who fought impossible odds and came out stronger, make sure to subscribe to this channel. We share these stories because everyone deserves to know that survival is possible, that strength can be found even in the darkest moments. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Share it with someone who's fighting their own battle with family, with someone who needs to know that choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here, for witnessing this journey. I hope it gives you courage for your own path, whatever that might be. Remember, you are stronger than you think. You are worthy of love and respect, and you deserve to protect your peace no matter what. Take care of yourselves, and remember that your real family is the one that stands beside you when everything falls apart.